Hi Math, I'm Andy. Today I want to take a look at graphing a system of equations when they're written in standard form. And so there's kind of like a trick. There's multiple ways to do this. One way that it's suggested would be to rewrite the equations in slope-intercept form. But another way that we can look at this is to find the intercepts of the equation, the x and y intercepts. So what I mean by that is if we take the equation x minus y equals -1, and we essentially going to ask two questions about it. I'm going to ask the question, what is y if x equals 0? So that's going to be the first question I would ask. If x had a value of 0, what would be the value of y? And I can do that just by substituting it in. So this would say 0 minus y equals -1. Well, 0 minus y is the same as -y equals -1. And I know that y is 1, but just to kind of finish this mathematically, I could divide both sides by -1. That's going to give me a positive y is 1. And so what I just did is I found what we're going to call the y-intercept. This is the place on the y-axis where x is 0. So this is a point 0, 1. 0, 1 is a solution to this equation. So it's a point on its graph. And so 0, 1 will be a dot on my graph. Now with this equation, I'm going to ask another question that's very similar. I'm going to ask the question, what is x if y equals 0? So it's kind of the opposite of the previous question. What would be the value of x if y was equal to 0? So the equation would read x take away 0 equals -1. And this is an easy solve. X minus 0 is just x, and so x equals -1. So when y is 0, x is -1, and so that's going to be a point on my graph, -1, 0. We call this the x-intercept. We call it the x-intercept because this point is on the x-axis. Notice this is the x-axis, and that's where this point is on. Now, both of these points are solution to this first equation. Both of the points make the equation true. So they're both going to be on a line. Because remember, the line that represents an equation, it's secretly a picture of all of the answers. I like to think of a line as really, it's not a line, but it is points that are so close together. All of these points are x's and y's that are true for this equation. Just like your hand is secretly a bunch of skin cells that are so close together that it just looks like your hand. But if you were to zoom in, you would see individual skin cells just so small and close together. That's kind of what like a line is with points. So through these two questions, we were able to graph this line without knowing the slope. Now let's take a look at this second equation. I'll just call this equation number 2. I'm going to ask the same questions, 2x plus y equals 4. And I'm going to ask the question, what is y if x equals 0? So I'm going to ask this same question, what is y if x is 0? So this equation would read 2 times 0 plus y equals 4. Again, I'm substituting the number 0 for x. And I just do my math. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus y equals 4. This says that y equals 4. So that means that 0, 4 is a point on this, the line that represents the solutions to this equation. So I'm going to go to my graph, 0, 4. We call this the y-intercept because it is on the y-axis. So I'm going to ask that same question that I did down here. The question is, what is x if y equals 0? So I'm taking the 0, plugging it in for the y value, and I'll figure out what x is. So this equation would read 2x plus 0 equals 4. So I plugged in that 0 for y. 2x plus 0 would just be 2x. And I don't want 2 x's, I want 1 x. So I'm going to do the inverse operation to multiplication, divide by 2 on both sides, and I end up with x equals 2. So what I just did was found another point on this line. I found the point 2, 0. 2, 0 is a point. So I'm going to go over 2 and up 0. I'm going to put that dot on my line. And now I have these 2 points that are solutions to this second equation. I can take a straight edge and I can connect these 2 points with a straight line. And ultimately, I'm looking for the solution to the system. Now, the solution to the system, I always think X marks the spot. You're actually looking to find the place where these 2 points or these 2 lines meet at one point. They meet right there. And it looks like they meet when x is 1 and y is 2. So 1, 2, we would say, is the solution to the system. The point 1, 2 is the solution to the system. So we're always looking for where the lines meet when we're looking for a solution. And we could actually provide some algebraic evidence. When x is 1 and y is 2, this equation says 1 minus 2 equals negative 1. And that is a true answer. 1 take away 2 is negative 1. This equation would read 2 times 1 plus 2 equals 4. Again, I'm just taking the x and y and replacing them for 1 and 2. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 plus 2 does equal 4. So what we just found was the one value of x and y that makes both equations true at the same time, the solution to the system.